Welcome everybody to Taking First Steps, Module 8. Today we're focusing on the topic of leading up to nomination day and getting out the vote. Just as a reminder of how we got here, so our team is a group of racialized progressives with various political campaign experiences coming together to bridge gaps of knowledge so that more Canadians feel comfortable in seeking a political nomination. And our guiding principle is that no person should be limited from accessing this material, regardless of race, income, location, or partisan ideology. Today is the last module of the 8-module series.
And our guest speaker for today is Toufic Adlouni. He's a lawyer, entrepreneur, political strategist who brings a wealth of experience, knowledge, and perspective. He's an emerging technologies lawyer and entrepreneur. He served in the past as Vice President Organization of Young Liberals of Canada in 2014 to 2016. He has also served as a federal legislative assistant, as a strategic planner and board member of various community organizations, and has worked with youth groups and food bank advocacy in Ottawa. And he was the co-chair of the National Federal Liberal Youth Campaign in 2015. And we're very fortunate to have him here today. Welcome, Toufic.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me.
So today we're going to be talking about getting the votes you need. So we'll be talking about the village concept, which will just be building on the campaign structure from the module 4, as well as the bundler system, which Toufic will elaborate on.
Right. So I think first and foremost, I know that we're on module 8 here, and I know that that's kind of the end of the series, but it is important, I guess, to touch upon how your campaign team is structured. And I think having extremely clear structural lines in terms of the way in which the campaign team is structured is going to actually assist you in your ability to execute a successful campaign. So the campaign team, as you see, we're talking about the neighborhood, what they call the neighborhood team lead. I don't know if I like calling it a neighborhood team lead because I don't know if people always organize by neighborhoods, but if they do, you call them that. I like to call them bundlers, which is essentially what we're going to get into right now. So I really like this conception of a village concept. I think it is a strong indication of like where and how campaigns are run. You have to understand that a candidate is elected by the people of the riding, the people of the community. And with that sense, it's the people with the greatest connection to the community that really have the innate advantage. Sometimes it can be daunting to have other candidates with very impressive CVs and national name recognition and prior ministerial experience, and you're like, well, I can't compete against these guys, right? They have all the wind in their sails, and I'm just, you could let's say be like a local butcher or something of the sort. But I'll tell you that the local butcher has innate advantages to the prior minister and national law firm partner that you can use to your advantage and leverage to your ability. And it's important to recognize that those voices that you have really matter vis-a-vis kind of these high-end positions. And you're going to have a fight even within the party. So it's okay to feel the pushback from the party, right? There will be a pushback from the party. And in each party, there's difference. There's differences in the type of pushback. I've been myself with the Liberals mostly, but I've had the experience of working not only with the provincial Liberals, but the federal Liberals in several different provinces, and each of the provincial liberals actually have a different culture. And for instance, in with the Ontario Liberal Party, at least when I was around, the pushback for being what's called like a non-sanctioned candidate was quite severe, uh, like really severe. Uh, but the pushback with the federal Liberal Party was not that heavy, at least when I was around. And this kind of ebbs and flows and goes from different parties to different parties. So be okay with the pushback, be okay with the pressure, because if you're running and you're probably attending this, we can assume a couple of things. You're probably the outside dark horse candidate, that you're not the minister candidate with the impressive CV. And that's just important to recognize. Now, again, innate advantages. People people who work in the community know the community and they understand the community. They've lived there, they've breathed it, they've worked with the people there. A national lawyer on Bay Street does not know the community as well as you do. Right? I'm a lawyer myself, and I'll tell you, most of the time they're working. And most likely if they're not working, they're spending time with their families and loved ones. And there's obviously exceptions to the rule where you have very involved lawyers from national law firms really implicating themselves in the community, but on broad brushstrokes, they are disconnected to what is happening in their backyard. They're disconnected to their neighborhoods, to their ethnic communities, to the religious communities or whatnot. And you have to really ask yourself, are you connected to your community? And would you really be the person to represent that community? Because I know you guys have already dealt with this on the module, why to run. And it kind of comes back to this why to run, because if you are running for glory or for, to prove dad wrong or for some narcissistic tendency, right? You're not going to be that community advocate that we're trying to recruit here. You're going to really have to change your value set and your perceptions to to be able to really run a campaign in this fashion. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to you, the candidate, let's say, to build that campaign culture from within yourself, from within your heart, outward. And I don't think a lot of people get that. So if you're not that person at this time, it doesn't mean that you can't be that person, right? You can definitely build yourself as a community person, but it might take a little bit longer than this current election cycle. It means starting right now, doing meaningful work with meaningful people, and building real relationships and real value in kind of the communities that you work. So that's very important. I think the next thing about kind of conventional wisdom and traditional methodology, again, I would kind of throw everything out the door with that sense. You don't need that. What you need is you need yourself, your authenticity in your group of people to be able to build out a campaign. You don't need fancy software. You don't need big dollars, right? You don't need any of this. You don't need social media. You don't need marketing. You only need organization. And I know I'm coming at it as an organizational guy, but especially on the nomination level, I will put money on the fact that it is your organization of the Get Out the Vote that will be the linchpin to your success. All the other stuff, it's stuff that you're going to have, but it can stay basic. Next point is important. Why you should evaluate doing this. Running, running as a candidate is hard. It's tough. It's going to create a lot of pressure upon you and your family. And I really want to emphasize that you guys should have a conversation with your family members, with your spouses, with your children, even if they're very young, to understand is this really kind of the life that you guys want to live? I know that these days spouses don't have to get super involved in campaigns as they used to, but it means that there's an opportunity cost here. You're not going to be taking out the trash as much, or maybe walking the dog, or taking the kids to baseball. Like, is that what you want? And it's an important discussion to have, and I really wanted to outline that as well. Necessity of authenticity and being your true self. I'm a big believer in this. I think that everyone tries to be what they think a politician looks like, and what you end up being is a bad version of the person that you're trying to be, right? Let's say I'm running on a candidate and I got a hotshot kind of politician. The guy he looks like he looks like a Kennedy, right? With the hair and the thing, and he got the golden retriever and the like the photogenic family and stuff, and he's always wearing nice suits and talks really well and whatever. And you might be like, oh, well, that's what a politician should look like. I need to be that person. Therefore, you mold yourself to be that shittier version, and then it comes off all wrong because you are not that person. If you're a skidoo, don't try to be a Toyota. If you can go faster on water, go faster on water. And this is where it comes down to the first thing, where you have to find that real intention within your heart to say who you are and to stand up for who you are. Because you will be the best version of yourself, but you're going to be a shitty version of everyone else. And people see that. Michael Ignatieff was a great question. It was a great thing. The guy tried in extremely miserable fashion to paint himself as the common man. He was anything but common. The way he spoke showed that he was nothing but common, right? The Liberal Party actually changed strategies with this, and with Trudeau changed tact and didn't try to present Trudeau with a common man kind of vibe. They presented him as a privileged child of a prime minister. That one they couldn't run away with. But I would say the electorate at large is much more smarter than you think. They will smell inauthenticity a mile away. So don't try to hide it. And I even think now there was a authentic part of Trudeau that was lost, and I think that was a huge part of his selling attraction, which is lost now, which is this kind of slipper wearing bead necklace dude, which can talk well on policy and understands things, but doesn't come off as this typical guy. And I know there was a big debate within the party around, I call it the great slipper debate, right? Can Trudeau wear slippers or not? I was firmly on the side that he could, because it was him. He wore his slippers. That's what he wanted. So wear your slippers, I think, because that's where it comes out in true form, where you come out in your true form. Last thing here is on policy. I'm not a policy guy, so I'm a big believer, especially on this level, is that you pick one big thing that really matters to your voting base, and you just talk about that all the time. The reason being is because if you have a really big kind of policy agenda, it's going to get muddled the water. Your communication is going to get muddled. Communication is difficult enough to break through and actually get people to listen to you. Talk about one thing that really, really matters for the community, and not something that you pull out of your butt while you and your friends try to find a way to like get voters. Like really listen. Like what is the thing that a lot of community members, your community members, are frankly complaining about, and try to do that. Right? Try to make it happen, and be realistic. For instance, in Saint Laurent, there is a large Lebanese population. 30% of Saint Laurent, that's a riding here in Montreal, is Lebanese, and the one thing that they really care about, the one thing, is getting direct flights from Montreal to Beirut. But that's just not going to happen for security reasons. So don't pick something as well that you don't think is going to go through, because then 4 years later it's going to come to the big bite, and you're going to have to pay the accountability consequences of promising people a direct flight to Beirut and it not happening. All right, so let's move on here. So once you get kind of those baseline things set, it's time to create your system, which is going to get the vote. So the system in which is going to get you the vote is what I call the bundler system. It's nothing too fancy. I just call it that because I don't know. It's what I've called it for the last 10 years. It also might be outdated because I haven't been in politics for about 5 years. But I still think it is the best way to kind of get elections won, because every time I've used it, I've won my election. I've won my elections at a plus and minus 10% of the number in which I estimated the vote to be, which is to show you how accurate the bundler system is. Okay, so kind of baseline principles in the bundler system. You have a population in your riding of about 100,000 people, right? About 1-2%, who knows, are going to come out and vote in your Liberal nominee. Getting Liberal nominees registered is quite easy, and you have a whole group of population that you can kind of get registered as a member of the Liberal Party to get to vote. Therefore, it's not a question of competing for votes. It's a question of getting enough votes to wipe out the competition, right? Don't compete for the liberal pool of people, right? Those people are going to be hard fought votes. And that group of people is so small compared to the vastness of the people who aren't in politics, aren't in the Liberal Party, and live in your riding. So why are you going to fight tooth and nail for these voters when you have this huge kind of pool of voters that you can get? So that's the thing. Actual Liberal card-carrying members, honestly, I wouldn't even deal with it. Like the communication, the policy, the stuff like that, the way you speak, the way you handle yourself, your values, that's what's going to convince them. And that's going to come out in debates and in Liberal Party gatherings and stuff like that. And maybe you'll get 20, maybe you'll get 30. That's fine. That's good enough. But that's not where the real votes are coming. The real votes are coming from that community that you've built by your years of community service. And by the way, when I mean community service, I really don't mean that you got to go right now and start like volunteering in X, Y, and Z. No, being a local butcher and creating meaningful relationships with the people that come into your store is a community service, right? If you're creating those relationships. If you are a lawyer and you are going in to kind of the community center and giving out free legal advice to people, that's building a community there, right? You don't like it is good to be volunteering and working and standing up for community rights, et cetera, but don't kind of say, oh, just because I've been, I don't know, cutting hair for the past 10 years that I haven't built a community presence. Dude, the barber has a great community presence. Everyone's talking to you about their problems. You're essentially the neighborhood psychiatrist. Don't forget that. So with that, first things first is look at the historical trends in the past 20 to 30 years for Liberal nominations in your country, in your riding. and see what the number is for the person to win. Get the highest number and plus it by 20%. Okay? That number, let's say it's 7,000. Okay? That number is your golden number. That's the number you ingrain in your face, because that's the number you're going to hit, no matter what. Because if you hit that number, you win. Historically speaking, no one's gotten that high. No one's even got higher than 5,000. That's the highest someone got in the last 20 or 30 years. And you just added 20% of that. You get 7,000, your freaking population, your guy's losing. He's 100% losing. So you work on that number till the cows come home. And now this is where you build up to that number. Every vote is counted before it is delivered. This isn't a wishing game. This isn't a spray and pray game. This is data. This is analytics. Every name you are going to mark, you will have 7,000 names in this Excel sheet. You don't need fancy software for this. I did it off of an Excel. You will have every single name here, which you're going to be able to kind of drive home. So you first start with your first sheet of Excel, which is what's called the bundlers. These are your homies, right? These are the guys that are going to back you no matter what, right? And they are the guys that you know have also a community presence, right? Have also strong pull, are also leaders in a variety of different sectors of the community. And if you don't have this, build this, right? People start elections 2 years in advance. You should start planning your elections 6 years in advance, right? Building that community, building those relationships, building that authenticity, building that value add in where you land. And you go and you sit down with all those bundlers, one by one. You tell them you're running. You tell them you need your support, and you tell them that you need this. Now, this is really important because a lot of people, when they volunteer, there is no real agreement. And when people don't have a sense of responsibility, accountability, and a realness to the agreement you're making, they are less likely to do it. So you need to sit down one-on-one, grab these people. If they like having things in paper, give them a paper so that they can sign. But I know in a lot of ethnic communities, you don't need to. Paperwork makes it weird. I'm saying that as a lawyer, but it is what it is. And you sit down with them like, hey, I'm running. I need you. I need you to do this. If you don't do this, I can't win. So you promised me to this, and you owe me this in your blood. And you spit in your hands or do whatever you need to do to like seal that deal in blood. But, well, COVID restrictions applying. But you make sure that that deal is sealed. Because if it's not sealed, he's not going to do it or she's not going to do it. And you ask your bundler, how many votes can you get me? Conservatively. And they'll say a number which is always way too high. Always way too high. It's never a correct number. So get it out of your head that he might be the most trustworthy friend of yours. It's not a right number. He'll be like, I could get you 400. Bullshit. Okay? Tell him to break that down by half. Okay? Half. You're going to get me 200. And you tell him, you give him then a separate sheet in that Excel, and you say, Sarah here is going to give me 200 votes. And you tell her to write out those votes. Write out every name. And she'll then have to contact those people and tell them, hey, explain them to the situation and get them to check off a corrective vote. Now, depending on where you are in the election campaign, it's going to be important to reaffirm the collection to votes. The more this organization builds downwards, the longer you need to have it go. Because if your initial bundler system does not get to that 7,000 people, you're going to need to go one lower, is that your bundlers are going to need to bundle for you, right? They're going to need to find their own bundlers and so on and so forth. So you can get to that 7,000. This is where it gets a little shaky on the structure. So it's really important to build that community, to have enough bundlers just on one level, but it's possible to build down on the bundlers. So this is why I would start this, 8 months out of the date line, of the date of register. So not even the vote date, 8 months. So it could even be a year beforehand. And that's where you start talking to these people, getting these lists, following up, making sure that these lists are full, they getting and confirming these people, and then you do kind of reconfirming, depending on how far you out. I might do a reconfirmation every month or so, making sure that they're still down to vote for you, they're still ready to do this, and they're still ready to go. And you build this Excel list out until you reach 7,000. 7,000 names, 7,000 people who have committed to vote, and 7,000 people who on election day, they have it marked it on your calendar, they take the day off, they do this, they do that. You get all of this stuff done because that day they got to deliver and they got to come home. So that's kind of the most important part of the bundler system. What I'll say the rest is what I call gravy. It's the sugar on the top, right? If you get this bundler system down right, you could just be at home. You could live your life with your family. Now, don't do that, because that's like an attitude of a loser. But you need to actually continuously work and do the things that you're doing here. The community events, and this is where it's important. What I call is to create a virtual you and the real you. The real you has to be face to face. I know it's COVID, so it might not really work out, but the real you has to be face to face with everybody, right? The virtual you is essentially you get a bunch of your volunteers, you got a team, and they are essentially you. You can get 2 or 3 people, and they're essentially you in the virtual world. They're on your Instagram, they're on Facebook, and they're just talking to people. Right? They're talking to people and they're engaging your community virtually. You're engaging your community in person. So that's how you kind of build out that 2-step method. And again, hosting events, throwing events, doing real events, not just like barbecues and stuff like that. I love doing events with the food bank. It really brought people together. We did a food drive. Let's do a food drive together, right? Let's go bring our community. Let's do a food drive. We used to do these things where we used to clean up parks. Let's go clean up a park together. Yeah, from time to time, it is fun to have a couple of drinks, at a bar and talk and stuff like that. That's fun too. But spice it up. Do real community activities, painting walls for youth services groups, knocking on doors for canned foods, right? Going and volunteering at the Breakfast Club for the YMCA, right? There's a lot of real community stuff that you can be doing, and that's how you build out your stuff. The knocking on doors part and calling, again, not so important in this election, because I think it's small potatoes, really, because it's a tough, fighting for that vote is real tough on the nomination level, but the real vote, the real value here is the creation of the bundler system and making sure your bundlers are made a pact in blood that they owe you these votes. They owe you the votes. If they don't deliver on the votes, we'll know. We'll see. Everyone's accounted for. And this is important that you have a bundler manager, right? The person who manages the Excel. It's the data management person. So this is how you manage the data in which you collect. Because you're going to have to, again, manage the data in which you collect on everyone there, and then build out your get to vote team to make sure everyone gets there. So your get out the vote team is super important. Well, elderly people with no cars, people who don't speak English or French, right? On the get out to vote, your whole bundler system, your bundlers are responsible to get those people in. Each bundler should build a system of their closest people to get the resources they need to bring people in. Most important resource is transport, okay? guys with cars. Doesn't need to be buses, guys with cars. Getting people, bringing them to vote. Getting people, bringing them to vote. It gets harassing. It gets a little harassing, but it it is important to get those people to the polls as quickly as possible, as easy as possible. So with each of the bundlers, they're going to have their backup team, which is the guys with the cars, and any other and guys who are just fixers. You know, there's going to be a lot of people with excuses. I can't do this because of this. I can't do this with that. Seriously, we've had like these bundler assistants where someone's like, oh, I gotta pick up my groceries and stuff like. I'll pick up your damn groceries, man. Just go vote. I'll take care of your groceries. You just have to lower the barrier as much as possible to get these people to vote. And then you make sure that when the bundlers are on the Google Sheets checking out the people that they're voting, and then you get to see on Get Out the Vote Day, you get to see in real time actually how well you're doing. It's pretty cool. So we already talked about the nomination in a bit. So again, this is really important here is to be continuously scrubbing your lists here, because if people have changed, if people have changed their voting preference, if people have moved, if things have happened that they're not there, that bundler Excel has to be continuously be scrubbed and optimized for the information that's in there, because it's useless to have someone who said yes, yes, yes for the much of, for May, June, and August, and then in September he says, nah, I don't want to vote for you anymore. That guy's no longer a vote for when it comes to the vote in November, which is extremely important. Again, timing, location, all this stuff has to be very well communicated. With the bundler system, it's important because the bundlers are responsible for this type of communication. You do central communication out to everyone who's on the list because you're going to have their emails and stuff like that. But again, emails are not the best way to kind of do this stuff. In my experience, emails are low touch, do not actually create a physical memory in the mind, and they're good to have as a reference point, but it's phone calls and it's texts, right? You call people, hey, whoever your name is, remember you're voting this day? Yeah, I got it. You're annoying me. Yeah, thanks. Cool. You got the email there? Yeah, I got it. The fucking, on this street, in this street. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, they're gonna be annoyed, but they'll do it. Okay. Essentially, that's the bundler system. That's the system in which I use to win almost all my elections by the margin which I set. It's based upon analytics. It's based upon numbers. It's based upon the fact that you don't need to be their type of candidate. You could be your own type of candidate and kind of build a ground up organization that is way more organized from a structural and data perspective than your opponents. And then if you could deliver upon your strategy in an effective way, then you win the election. You always do.
Cool. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Toufic, those insights. Now we have a few questions for you, just to elaborate on your experience. So the first question is, before politics, what did your career and upbringing look like?
So before politics, I guess I'll say that I was a pretty deadbeat kid. I like to just party and hang out and not really do much with my life. I came from the Middle East when I was 15. I came by myself, and it was tough at the beginning for me to kind of find my bearings and my purpose and my understanding. I was uprooted from my community, my culture, a lot of culture shocks. Famous story I always like to tell is when first week I was in Canada, go into the shoppers, and I'm starting to haggle with the shoppers lady for, she's like, it's 13.50. I'm like, I'll give you $10. Like, are you bargaining with me? I'm like, we don't do this here. Like, oh, screw it. So I guess I was really finding my a hard place to find my bearings, and I went to a boarding school because my dad's company in Saudi would pay for our boarding schools. So I was able to go and receive, I won't say I received the best education, but I went to a boarding school which was very well to do, with a very kind of ambitious, competitive, well to do group of students. But they all kind of also resembled themselves. Not a lot of I thought there was probably like five, 6 Muslim students really in the whole high school, which is kind of crazy. And I felt really ostracized. The whole administration, they didn't really like me because I was kind of a rebel, and I felt like the system didn't really work for me, and that kind of led me to drinking a lot, smoking a lot of weed, really just not doing much with my life. But what it did allow me to do is a couple of things. Number one, it allowed me to really understand that there are other pathways to life, right? We are said that there's a certain pathway to success and happiness and et cetera, et cetera. But if that pathway rejects you, it makes you think critically about life and the way you kind of want to run yourself. And I think that allowed me to really build a really strong critical thinking kind of skill set that allows me to always be questioning, why are things are happening? Why are they as such? Do they really need to be in such a way? And for me to kind of go about building my own path instead of following other people's path. And this has really been helpful for me in my career right now as an entrepreneur. I got my own law firm. I didn't get accepted in any of the fancy law firms and whatnot. I didn't do any of that. I went at it on my own, almost right off the bat after being a lawyer, and it's a different path, but it's a path that I think only people who have been kind of ostracized to a different path are able to take. So again, looking at your disadvantages and perceiving them as an advantage is a huge part of success in politics if you are part of a quote unquote disenfranchised group. And I think with politics, I think the reason why I first got into it is it gave my life as a young adult purpose and meaning that I think it did not have. I felt like I was doing something for my community. I was engaged, and it taught me all the lessons that I didn't learn as a young adult coming from Canada. And I'm forever grateful for politics being my great teacher, because it taught me what hard work is, taught me what community service is, taught me how to sell as well, which is a useful tool. Knocking on doors is, the quintessential sell me this pen. You don't know who the candidate is. You just have to sell them. So you got to get good at selling crappy candidates, because sometimes they're going to be crappy. So I think that's how I got involved, and I think that's what I owe politics to.
Awesome. So what drove you to get involved with politics and community advocacy, whether it's at the university level or the federal Liberals or anything else?
So I think what really drove me to community advocacy really is the fact that I came from a long family line in Lebanon of people who were involved in politics, and political engagement was always something that I think my family put a lot of emphasis on. And we were able to grow up in Saudi Arabia, where there was absolutely no democracy or any of that sort. And then I would go to Lebanon, where I got to see kind of like the inklings of democracy, but in an extremely bastardized way. Almost just the nature of democracy there is such a unique concept. It's almost ununderstandable to what it is here. And it gave me that wish to be involved through the political process. And I think my grandfather and and my family for instilling that service in me, and for my ancestors and my whole family line who have been servants of their community of their and in Lebanon, and yeah, that's where I got it. So I don't know if everyone else has that, but I think if you have that ancestry of political service, lean into that ancestry and use that strength to galvanize you into political service. I know, for instance, you see a lot of members of the Sikh community in politics because they really have that ingrained in their culture. If you have something of that sort in your culture, it's really important to leverage that and make sure that you bring that out. I know a lot of First Nation communities as well have that in terms of their who were the elders and who were the offsprings of the chiefs. And if you're part of that community, leverage that. And even if you're not as well, leverage the spirit of that to kind of take new leadership roles and work for the community.
What are some key lessons for candidates from previous campaigns you've worked on? I'm sure you've got lists on lists, but maybe top 5, top 10.
Top 5, top 10. Key lessons from candidates from previous campaigns that you've worked on. First and foremost is I would say going negative is ridiculous. Because it doesn't accomplish anything in which you want to do, and it actually completely ruins your brand. You have to, so that's kind of, I think, really first lesson there. I think lesson number 2 is I've kind of already said most of the lessons, but I'll go back into them. Lesson number 2 is to fundamentally battle yourself on your values. Really get into yourself to understand why you're doing this. And because I've seen candidates that do this for the wrong reasons, and some of them win, but I would say that, in all honesty, all of them fail because they're not really doing it for what I would say virtuous reasons. Other stuff is, I think the biggest one is people take things for granted, right? I think a lot of candidates take certain things for granted and they forget that it is an ongoing battle, and it's extremely important to battle out that battle. Thing number 4 is, I think, one real important lesson I have is concentrate on one thing as your guiding light to keep you motivated through the work, because it is a lot of work and you have to consistently be reflecting and reminding yourself of this. I don't know what else to say but a thing that is kind of the intentionality behind your actions, and allows you to drive yourself to the next level. Because I'll give you the example is that every day when we were on the national youth campaign on the 2015 election, every morning we had our team call from coast to coast. I feel bad. I was on Eastern time, but I felt really bad for the Western Canada because they had to wake up quite early. But we were on the call. We would have a call, and every morning we would repeat our intentions to see this election succeed. Right? We would repeat it every morning, and mine was, I'm doing this for the 35,000 Syrian refugees that are going to come into Canada, who lived a life no different than mine when I was a child. And for the cosmos from where my family's from, I could have very much have been Syrian if the border was just a couple of kilometers south. And I could have been stuck as a refugee, asking for someone else in the cosmos to give me a chance in a country that allows me to realize my full potential. And I saw in all those children, I saw myself, I saw my cousins, I saw my family members, I saw my father who had to escape Lebanon as a refugee. I saw my grandfather who had to escape Lebanon as a refugee. I saw my mother who had to take boats out of Tripoli during the war to Cyprus. I saw my whole family in there, and I fought for them because I knew who they were. They were me, they were my family. And nothing in the world will stop your motivation if you have that type of intention. You could work 14 hours and you're the happiest guy on earth. 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours, it didn't even matter, right? It was work that was galvanized through pure goodness of the soul, and it was really the most fundamental thing that you can do to keep you going. I think 3 is enough for whatever I did. That's a good one to end. Yeah.
Thanks, Toufic. I was going to say, could you share some insights on community advantage and authenticity, what that means and what that means to you?
Yeah, I think that it's hard to truly understand the level of kind of faces that we wear or masks that we wear in life, and it is something that I find does not allow you to tap into who you really are. Right? You got Nathan at work, you got Nathan at school, you got Nathan with his boys, you got Nathan with his partner, right? You got Nathan with his parents, you got Nathan with his community. You have Nathan the politician, you have Nathan the soldier, you have Nathan the boxer, you have all these Nathans, and your personality changes. Your personality even changes in the languages in which you speak. For the people who have noticed this, the multilingual folks on the call here, it changes with the languages that you speak as well. And what happens is that when you allow for other people to dictate who you are, it creates this level of disconnect between what is truly your authentic self and what is it that you want people to see in you. And this is where it gets hard in politics, is because then you are public, you are in front of everyone, and now you have several faces to maintain in a certain way. A great example is, the what I'll call the tightrope that Justin Trudeau kind of had to run back in the day between between Quebec and Alberta on the pipelines. Right? It was I'm this on that, but I'm this on this, and one may say, well, you have to, or else you're going to get totally decimated, right? And yes, that is a theory of thinking, but I'm of the theory I'm what's called a conviction candidate, right? The polls don't matter as long as you have conviction in what you believe in, and that you are authentic in that belief. And I think it actually just makes life a lot easier, because instead of having these complicated meetings, polling strategies, understanding what this community wants to hear, that community wants to hear, it already blows kind of your mind. And I've been that candidate before, by the way. This is not something that I've been what I call the candidate that people want me to be, right? and it's a tough juggling act to do, and it might not be the juggling act you want to do. You're a conviction candidate. This is who I am. This is what I believe in. If you do not like it, it's tough. It's just tough, right? You don't have to vote for me. You don't have to like me. You don't have to back my policies. But what I have to do is be convinced of where I'm coming from. And I think this is something on a much more personal level, but I think you guys need to kind of reflect on who you are, reflect upon what you stand for, what you believe in, and what your authentic self is. And your authentic self doesn't, people call Donald Trump authentic, because he was an asshole. Because assholeness kind of reverts to authenticity, right? Because everyone, people try to be nice and that's not true, right? That's not true. You don't have to be an asshole to seem authentic, right? You just have to be understanding and caring and produce a tone of kindness, even though you may be saying things that people don't want to hear, right? So this is an important point about form and content, right? Communication is broken down in two ways. It's broken down through form, the way in which it's communicated, and content, which is what the content is. What people care about more in terms of their emotional reaction to things is the form. It's not the content, right? I'll give you an example. Nathan, you're the greatest dude! Or I do something like, Nathan, you're a fucking asshole. And already you guys could feel kind of the difference from me shouting at Nathan, even though I'm saying something quite nice, and I said something quite mean, but I said it in a nice way. So it is important to at least say things in a nice and kind manner that is respectful for everyone. But it should not stop you if the truth in which you're standing for hurts, then that's okay. It is supposed to hurt. But it can still be said in a nice and respectful way, in a way in which is respectful for its audience and for the people involved.
Oh, excellent. And really just kind of to cap it off altogether, what piece of advice do you have for those that may not think they have the political capital or experience necessary to make difference in elected office? So if you had to, really drive home something for them.
Great question. It is the journey that will give you that experience and political capital. I'll tell you one thing. I'm here in front of you having gone into politics as a deadbeat kid who just smoked weed and drank all the time and not really doing much with my life, and coming out of it as a savvy political operative who now is in front of you today. It's because I tried and I had the courage to try. It is the journey that teaches us, and it's only in the journey that you will try. By the way, the most successful candidates are the ones who failed first. So go fail. Actually, write that you will fail your first election. Write it in your mind. Fix it in your mind that you will fail. That's how I did in mine. The first one I knew I knew I was going to fail, but I tried anyway because I was in it for the journey and not the end result. And this is always an important part of any type of life kind of goal, is that if you're in it for the journey, if you're weightlifting to look good, you probably are not going to meet your goals. If you're weightlifting because you really like weightlifting, then you're probably going to meet your goals with respect to aesthetic. So, yeah, on that note, I think the journey will give you that. So embark on it now, because if you don't, you're not going to have it.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Toufic, not only the political experience you have, but your life stories. I can speak for myself as well as for others that may be watching this, that it definitely helps round out the whole program. Do you have any final closing remarks for this module?
No, I'm good. Just say if anyone wants to reach out and just talk a little bit more about certain things, I'll be happy to do so. Find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'll be happy to talk things out with you and give you some advice whenever I can.
Awesome. Well, that concludes Module 8. Thank you so much for tuning in.